Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Dr. Chris DeArmitt. Chris is an internationally recognized scientist, author, and thought leader in materials science. I bet a lot of you listening out there don't have that background, and it's something that I wish more people knew about. He's the founder of the Plastics Research Council and the author of two very important books, The Plastics Paradox, and his latest, Shattering the Plastics Illusion. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show, Joe. I really appreciate it.
So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish people would make wise choices based on solid information. Because I'm a scientist, I think logic and reason count for something.
And would you say that logic and reason are not counting when it comes to plastic and our conversation around that topic?
They're really not. I mean, I think there's a famous quote by, I think it was George Bernard Shaw, said 2% of people think, 3% of people think they think, and the other 95% would rather die than think. And that's pretty much what I experience every day. Everyone today has a really strong opinion about stuff. And then you ask them, how many studies have you read? And the answer is zero, right? They've read a headline somewhere, they've stuck it in their brain, and they've never questioned it. So, and that's kind of weird because trust in media is at an all-time low. And then you ask people, where are your opinions coming from? And 100% of it's from the same media they just told me they don't trust. So that's kind of where we are. People are using lazy thinking and not really engaging the gray cells when it comes to the environmental issues or any other issues.
So let's start with basics, because I think for a lot of folks out there, this is a topic that even though they live with every day, they're not necessarily so familiar. For the layperson out there, what are microplastics and why do they even matter?
Well, they really don't matter. So people say that plastics are bad because they degrade to solids. But if you ask yourself, what does a leaf do, right? It dries out and it degrades to dust. What does a boulder do? It turns into gravel and stones and sand and then dust. And the same with an apple or any other solid material. So plastics behave just like everything else. It's just a very, very small part of dust, which is everywhere. Particles are everywhere, and we should be concerned about them because some of them are dangerous. But when it comes to plastic, it's 0.001% of dust we ingest and non-toxic. We got people think this is some new thing that nobody's studied. We have like 1,000 studies spanning 50 years on this. So it's been studied to death. We have all this. We have all the answers already.
When we talk about microplastics, so how small is small?
They're between about 1 micron, which is a millionth of a meter, and 5 millimeters. So basically dust.
That's like the size of what? A piece of rice?
Yeah, less than a piece of rice, something less than a piece of rice. And the funny thing is they've branded this thing specially, right? So think about micro wood. There is no such thing. Micro glass, micro ceramic, micro metal. Those terms don't exist, even though they're all in dust, right? Nobody talks about them. So they took plastic dust, made a special word for it, and then tried to scare us based on this great rebranding that the environmental groups have done.
Okay, so there is a very large and vocal opposition to the use of plastics in our world. You see that everywhere from, straws to utensils to cosmetics to cleaning products. In my own neighborhood, we were talking before we went online, some grocery stores charge you for plastic bags, others ban them altogether. And you've reviewed 5,000 peer-reviewed studies on plastics.
Right.
What did you learn?
That's the most studied thing I've ever seen in terms of the environment, plastic bags and other grocery bags, paper bags, cotton bags, and also bioplastic bags. They've got degradable versions. So there are 30 studies, life cycle studies, peer-reviewed studies on bags in the world. And every study ever done in the history of the world says that the polyethylene bag has least impact. And these are these are coming from Clemson and reputable organizations all around the world. They're not funded by the plastics industry. Some of them are funded by paper people. Every study ever done. So you have to ask yourself, so replacing them means more fossil fuel used, more waste, more litter, more greenhouse gas. Everything gets worse when you replace the polyethylene bag. So that's what we're doing now. We're banning and taxing the greenest option we have. And I'm not saying plastic has no impact, because it does have an impact. But if we want to be sensible, we should look at the data, pick the option that has the least impact and go with that. It just makes sense, right? And if you can, reuse that bag as many times as possible, which is what people do. They reuse them as trash bags. So here's the ironic thing. New Jersey banned bags, and then 3 years later, they went to see what happened. And the answer was dramatically increased plastic sales. because grocery bags are super thin. You can see through the Kroger bag weighs 6 grams. The paper bag weighs 60 grams. So you can see through it. And when you ban the very thin bag, people go and buy these trash can liners, which are 5 times thicker and 5 times more plastic. So this is the kind of nonsense that goes on. At the moment, people are paying extra to make things worse because they didn't check the science.
Okay, so this divide that has emerged between what the science says and what the public believes. I mean, how do we get to a point where we're taxing and banning, where you can't even get a plastic bag in some stores? What brought us here?
It's a combination. People who have been involved in legal cases, lawyers, and people who've had clashes over this kind of thing, over bans, so they had to go to court, they had to get evidence. These people have told me that they literally have documentary evidence that the glass industry, the metals industry, and the paper industry are funding this because they see plastics as a competitor. Plastics came out of nowhere, started stealing market share, and so those guys are funding a lot of this. And some of that you can prove. For example, there's a non-profit called Minderoo that publishes anti-plastic stuff. And if you go and see who founded Minderoo and funded it, it's iron and steel billionaires called the Foresters in Australia, right? They literally funded a non-profit that goes and points the finger at their competitor, even though the iron and steel industry is vastly more harmful for the environment than plastics are. So that's one specific example. There's a lot of vested interests just spewing nonsense, and the reporters aren't checking it.
Why aren't they doing that fact checking, and why are people running with it?
It's not profitable. If you look at how profitable and how exciting is a lie compared to the truth, the lie is way more exciting. When you make up something, the world's your oyster. You can make up anything, some crazy stuff. There's a floating island the size of Texas. It doesn't exist, and yet everyone believes in it. So you can literally make up everything. In my world, I'm a scientist, so every single thing I say has to be true, and I have to back it up with peer-reviewed evidence. I have to cite the study, give you a link to the study, so you can check it yourself. That is vastly more work. In fact, there's a name for that. It's called Brandolini's law, that telling the truth is vastly more work than telling a lie. And so that's the problem. It's very easy to make stuff up. And even if I go to, let's say I go to 10 reporters and show them the truth, only a couple of them will even look at the evidence. The rest of them are not even interested in, I'm not even asking them to agree with me. They won't even glance at real data.
So try to steelman this for us here. Why are people in the anti-microplastics camp so determined to keep plastics out of our lives, other than the profit motive? Can you give us maybe their side of the debate and how you might respond?
I haven't really seen a genuine debate, if you see what I mean, somebody who genuinely was against it and had genuine concerns. What I've seen is a lot of bad science and people with vested interests. So if I've read 500 studies on microplastics, that's more than anyone in the world, I believe, independently, unpaid, in case anyone's wondering. If anyone's wondering about my books, they're also for free. I've got the latest one here. This is for free in several languages. So is the first one. All of the stuff I do is done for free and given away for free, verbatim. So in 500 studies, I've never seen a credible study that shows any evidence of harm from microplastics. 93% of media articles say that microplastics are a threat. And then if you look at the scientific articles, 20% say that they're a threat. So it's scientifically proven that the media are lying to us. They've intentionally distorted the facts to get their clicks and their advertising dollars, and just completely abandoned the truth. Even the New York Times, even the Washington Post, all of these major organizations are just out there spewing nonsense with zero evidentiary support. And that's sad, actually, to me as a scientist. If you asked me, if you offered me a PET bottle or a can or a glass bottle, I would take the metal or the glass any day. I like the feeling in the hand. I like how cold it feels. I like the tactility of it. I'm not telling people to buy plastic. What I'm telling people, you should do exactly what you want. But what I don't like is that well-meaning people are paying extra to increase harm because they've been lied to. That's what I don't like. Choose what you want, but don't do it based on a lie.
So what are some of those distortions that you see repeated often in the media? What are the big ones?
So the biggest ones are that we're drowning in plastic. In actuality, plastic is less than 1% of the material we use. So if we're using too much stuff, right? That's true. But if anyone was genuinely worried about how much stuff we're using, surely they would be talking about the other 99%. So that just shows how disingenuous that argument is. Anyone who says we're drowning in material, they're right, we're using a lot of material, but you wouldn't talk about plastic is 0.5% of the material we use. You wouldn't be talking about the 0.5% all day and never mentioning concrete or steel and iron or wood or the major ones, right, which account for 99%. So that is just an example of these people say that we're drowning in plastic. That's why I'm against it. And it doesn't add up. If they genuinely were against it, they would be talking about it's the same with waste. Plastic is less than 1% of waste and scientifically proven to massively reduce waste. And you can check that yourself in the kitchen. Go and weigh a plastic straw, it's 0.9 grams. Go and weigh the paper straw, it's 2 grams. Go and weigh the metal straw, it's 20 grams. Go and weigh the glass straw, it's 30 grams, right? Replacing plastic requires 3 to 4 times more material. So it's scientifically proven, peer-reviewed, to reduce waste. It reduces greenhouse. So if I were to encapsulate this in a one sentence, which is what you like to do in your show, and I like that idea, is plastic is 0.5% of the material we use, and 9 times out of 10, it has least impact. That is a scientific fact. So if you want to replace plastic, there certainly are alternatives, but you'll be paying extra to make things worse. And if that's what you want to do it. But don't do it because you were lied to by some green group or some politician.
So for environmentalists who call for the banning of plastic straws in your local coffee shop, what is their basis for making those claims?
Yeah, they don't have a basis. So, for example, the World Wildlife Fund tells us we eat a credit card of plastic a week, and science says that that would take 10,000 years to do. So that's the size of whopper that they're prepared to tell. And even if you write to them, even if you send them to science and say, please remove that claim, they keep it up next to a big, juicy donate now button. Complete nonsense. It's the same with all of these other organizations. They make claims with zero evidentiary support. Even if you have 10 studies that say the opposite, they just simply do not care. Even the former president of Greenpeace, Dr. Patrick Moore, he's a scientist, he left in disgust and said they abandoned the environment, and now their business model, according to him, is to tell lies for donations. And he says the other ones are doing the same thing. And I took the evidence I have to class action lawyers, and they said, yeah, you're right, Chris. There's a case here. These people are just telling lies for donations, and their donors should demand their money back.
So on a policy level, what are some of the reasonable measures and solutions that we might be looking at here in terms of just containing the impact that plastics have on our lives, on the environment? Should we revert back to the use of plastic bags in stores?
This is the funny thing, Joe. We live in a world of information. Anybody who wanted the answers, the facts and what works, it's available, and it's in my book too. So, and policymakers are starting to come to me and saying, what should we do? Because banning something and having to reverse it's embarrassing. So we have the solutions. The things you can do to help the environment are fly less, drive less, and eat less meat. Those are 3 things you could do right now. The trouble with those things is, and why people aren't doing them, is that it involves an actual sacrifice. So this is what people are doing. They want to look good to their friends, so they swing this cotton bag over their head like they're an angel. That's called virtue signaling or moral grandstanding, right? They want to look like a good person, but they don't want to make any of the actual sacrifices it would take to be a good person. So a lot of this is about people wanting to feel good, wanting to look good without actually doing what's good. And I can tell you, pretending to be good is a lot less work than being good. I've sacrificed 1,000 hours a year unpaid for 5 years just because my daughters were lied to at school, and that made me angry. Whereas other people are out there just feeling virtuous and even criticizing me, the one who's actually done the work, when they haven't read a single study. So yeah, we live in a crazy world where people just have forgotten about honesty. They've forgotten about being humble and checking the facts. Your opinion about any subject should be proportional to how much evidence you've read, right? You shouldn't be overwhelmingly confident about something if you haven't checked any evidence. And that's where people are right now. They see a headline and think they're Albert Einstein.
What would you tell someone who is genuinely concerned about the health and environmental impact of microplastics?
Yeah, I would say that particles can be a threat. People die from asbestos every year. People die from quartz every year and from soot. There are things in the as particles which are a real danger, and that's what we should be worried about. We shouldn't be burning wood. We shouldn't be breathing in soot. We shouldn't be standing next to a busy road which has got tons of pollution. There are proven things which actually kill you. Recorded deaths from microplastic is 0. It's just not a thing. It's a tiny non-toxic fraction of dust. We got study after study. You can feed 5% microplastic to rats for months and nothing happens, literally 0. The only thing that might happen is you might eventually lose weight because you're replacing food with plastic. So these things are not a problem. And that's the thing. We only have so much time in the day to worry and so many billions of dollars to spend on policy. Let's spend it on stuff that actually makes a difference, like quartz or like asbestos or like something that's actually proven to be a threat. If you're worried about plastic, you're just increasing stress and giving yourself a health risk by worrying about something that's not worth worrying about.
The author and the scientist is Dr. Chris DeArmitt. Chris, Thanks for sharing your wish with us today.
Thanks for being one of the few people who cares about facts. Thanks, Joe.